Welcome back, everyone, to another week and another episode of Interventions and Detentions. I'm your host, Brad, and this episode today is coming to you from a listener, hopefully listener, former peer of mine, Julie Rasball. She commented last week on social media posts for Interventions and Detentions when I was kind of like digging for some topics. And she said, why don't you do one on attendance, Brad, and the importance of attendance? And I know where Julie's coming from. Julie's a former secretary for a corporation I worked at. She probably dealt with attendance and attendance phone calls for most of her day working at the school. And I do think this is a great topic that we're going to jump into today. One that's kind of timely for me, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But this is episode 2:28, season 2, episode 28. Man, I can't believe I'm up to 28 already this year, and there's a lot of year left to go. We're not even in spring break in my corporation yet. We got 2 more weeks, so about a week and a half. But anyway, this episode's called Everyday Counts, Attendance Matters in Indiana Schools. And why we're focusing on Indiana schools, well, one, because that's where I'm at. I'm at Indiana, Northeast Indiana, and Indiana just come out with some new guidelines for school accountability the last 2 weeks. And guess what? The one common factor for accountability across all grade levels is going to be attendance, student attendance. So that's why I feel like this is timely for me anyway, because it's come up in our admin discussions on how we're going to track all these different things. Attendance probably being the easiest one. However, it's the one that we have probably the most little control over. I mean, test scores are obviously going to be a part of accountability that I also feel like it's hard to control those things as well. Teachers can do the best that they can do in the classroom instructionally and get those kids ready to take the test. But when it comes down to sitting in front of that test, I've always complained because what's in it for the kid? They don't realize how important their performance on those tests are for us as a school. The reflection of, just how the teacher does, how the school does, and the letter grades that we get that are assigned to it. And I've tried bribes, I've tried incentives over the years, and it's really, really hard for kids to give us the best on a test that they don't really care about. And I can't blame them, but that's probably a whole other episode. We do the same sort of thing often with attendance. We offer incentives and rewards for showing up every single day. We get on parents when they don't show up every day. We send those letters, the ones, 5-day, 10-day, 15-day, the ones that talk about, threats of DCS, probation department, courtroom, all the things that we have to do because the state says that we have to do them. And we'll go through a lot of that stuff today in this episode. We're diving into a topic that might seem simple at first, but it's actually one of the most powerful predictors of student success when it really comes down to it. And again, it's all about attendance today. When we talk about attendance, most people think of the daily roll call. Brad here, Emily here, Sherry. Sherry didn't make it to school today. I'm just picking on you, Sherry. Every day a student misses school, it's not just a missed math problem or a missed reading assignment. It's a missed opportunity, an opportunity for growth, learning, and social development. It's a day where a student misses connection with their peers and with their teachers. It misses guidance and encouragement, and it falls further behind in the rhythm of learning. So across Indiana and the country, absenteeism has serious consequences. Missing school regularly, even if just for a few days here and there, can create gaps in academic performance that compound over time. And these aren't just stats, folks. They're the real-life experiences of students, families, and teachers that go through this every single day. And now, like I said, here in Indiana, attendance is becoming more than just an individual concern. The state is including chronic absenteeism as a factor in school accountability grades. That means attendance isn't just about students showing up every day. It's about how schools are going to be evaluated, how resources are going to be allocated, and how school improvement is ultimately measured. Schools are being held accountable for ensuring students are present and engaged. So in this episode, we're going to cover everything that we can about attendance, Indiana attendance laws, research on why attendance matters, how schools intervene with students and families, strategies and incentives to encourage consistent attendance, and the implications that tie back to school accountability. So by the end of this episode, my goal is for you to see attendance not as a simple rule, but as a critical lever for equity, opportunity, and student success. And I think if parents are listening, hopefully this will help maybe make some sense and understanding of our attendance policies and why we as administrators in school probably come off like we're harping a lot of times on you getting your kids to school. There's so many other factors for them and us being accountable other than just being in their seat that day. So let's take a little look here and dive right into it. Why attendance really does matter. Let's start with the basics. Why does it matter so much? Well, across the country, like we said, chronic absenteeism, which means missing a significant number of school days, is a serious concern. Nationally, about 14% of students are chronically absent, which means they're missing enough school to negatively affect their learning. In elementary school, missing as few as 18 days in a year, less than 1 day a week, can significantly impact reading and math performance for a student. Attendance is not just about academics. Being present in school allows students to develop social skills, emotional intelligence, and resilience. A child who misses class repeatedly may not engage in collaborative activities, discussions, or problem-solving opportunities with his or her peers. These social and cognitive skills are critical for success, not just in school, but in life. Research confirms that chronic absenteeism has long-term consequences for students. Students who are absent frequently in early grades are less likely to perform at grade level in middle school. They're more likely to struggle in high school and are less likely to graduate on time. Beyond the academics, absenteeism predicts socioeconomic outcomes, including future employment opportunities, and ultimately, earned income. Attendance is also an equity issue. Students from low-income families, those with disabilities, and students facing health or family challenges are disproportionately affected. These students may miss school due to transportation issues, like we just don't have a car that runs. Maybe medical appointments, family responsibilities. Mom needs to go to work. There's a baby at home and I need somebody to care for my child. So older sibling that's in elementary school, you get to stay home today to take care of brother or sister. And there's other barriers as well. But without targeted support, absenteeism can widen achievement gaps and deepen inequities. Consider two students in the same classroom. Student A misses multiple days each month due to a chronic illness. Student B attends consistently, even on days when learning feels challenging. By the end of the year, Student B has maintained continuity of instruction, built stronger relationships with peers and teachers, and developed habits that support long-term learning. Student A, despite equal potential, may struggle just to keep up academically and socially. Attendance also affects school culture. When a significant number of students are absent, teachers must reteach material, classroom momentum slows down, and students who attend consistently are going to start to feel frustrated. Chronic absenteeism isn't just an individual problem, it's a community challenge. It affects the whole school, every classroom. The data shows that early attendance patterns predict future outcomes. Students who attend regularly in kindergarten and first grade are significantly more likely to read at grade level by third grade. In contrast, students with frequent absences in those early years are more likely to struggle in middle and high school. These early gaps tend to persist even if attendance improves later. The takeaway, folks, every day matters. Even short-term absences accumulate, and consistent attendance is a foundation for both academic and social success. Schools, families, and communities must prioritize attendance as a shared responsibility. So think about this, parents. It's not, again, about us harping. We want your kids in seats, in-school learning, because when they're not there, not only does it affect them, it affects the students around them, their teachers, and just the whole climate and culture of a school. Now that we understand why attendance is so critical and important, let's look at the Indiana-specific laws and guidelines. Indiana law requires students to attend school from the fall of the year they turn 7 until they graduate or turn 18. So if you think about that for a minute, I think a lot of parents don't understand that. We always think we need to get kids in preschool and kindergarten, which we do. Those are very crucial things for kids to do. But by law, students don't have to start attending until they're age 7, which would be, the end of their first grade year, basically. Okay. I can't believe that hasn't changed at some point yet because of the focus that we're putting on early literacy for kids. I can't believe that law hasn't changed to bring it down to like age 5, that they have to be enrolled by age 5, which would be kindergarten year. But maybe that's coming down the road. Okay, so they don't have to even attend school until they're 7 and until they graduate or turn 18. That's when the law is kind of the beginning and the end. Parents and guardians are legally responsible for ensuring students meet this requirement. Schools classify absences as excused or unexcused. Excused absences generally include things like illnesses, doctor excused appointments, family emergencies. They often require documentation regardless, like a doctor's note or whatever. Unexcused absences are those that occur without a valid reason. Parents don't call in, they don't bring a doctor's note, things like that. A student becomes, quote, a habitual truant person after 10 or more unexcused absences in a school year. Again, this is Indiana state law, folks. At that point, schools are legally obligated to do some kind of intervening or intervention. And those interventions can include things like notifying juvenile court or child services, but these measures are intended as a last resort. The focus is on support and prevention, not so much the punishment part, especially in the lower grades. Parents can also face consequences, and this is becoming more and more common. Failing to ensure that student attendance happens on a consistent basis can result in fines or misdemeanors, sometimes misdemeanor charges. But again, the system emphasizes support first. We want to work together with you, parents. Schools are expected to identify the barriers like those transportation issues, family responsibilities, health concerns, and then we got to help address them. We got to work together as a team to see what we can do to make things better for everybody. Attendance officers, counselors, social workers are key players in this part. They monitor patterns, they meet with the families, they provide resources to help the students stay engaged. For example, a school might work with a local organization to provide rides for students who live far away from school, or coordinate with healthcare providers to schedule appointments outside of school hours. Things like that we can do to help. Indiana also requires schools to track and report attendance data to ensure compliance with both state law and federal education requirements. Okay, we have to track that daily. We turn it in and report it at the end of the year. I think we might even do it twice a year now. This data is increasingly used not just for compliance, but for that accountability piece. Schools analyze absenteeism trends and identify at-risk students and develop proactive strategies that prevent chronic absenteeism before it becomes entrenched in a student. The legal framework is designed to support student success, but it also sets clear expectations. Parents, students, and schools all have defined roles, and early intervention is critical. Understanding these laws help educators and families work together to address attendance issues early and constructively. So how do schools handle attendance? Let's just talk about that for a minute. It starts with accurate record keeping, plain and simple. Schools take daily attendance for reporting purposes, but the real work begins when the patterns start to emerge. Early intervention is key. Most schools notify parents once a student reaches 5 absences, even if excused. And I think that's one thing that a lot of parents struggle with, because we have to send the letters, the 5-day, the 10-day, the 15-day. whether those absences are excused or unexcused. And I always wish that we had a better way of flagging the ones saying, hey, parents, your child's missed 5 days, and we know why, and we know that you've called in every single time, so keep doing what you're doing. This is just to inform you of those absences and make sure that we're on track and you are on track. And then I feel like we could have another letter that says, parents, your child has missed 5 days. You haven't called one time. You haven't brought in a doctor's note. And if this continues, you're going to see another letter at 10 with the same tone, and we're going to have to contact DCS. We need two different letters sometimes because the parents that are doing the right thing and making those phone calls and sending in the doctor's notes get really offended when they open those letters, and they often don't understand why they've received them, which I get it. Okay, I get it. The goal with those letters and with the communication, though, is to catch the small issues before they turn into chronic absenteeism, plain and simple. Many schools establish attendance teams, groups that include counselors, social workers, administrators, sometimes teachers. And these teams review that data weekly or monthly, and they identify at-risk students. Once identified, schools implement tiered interventions. And, speaking of tiered interventions, to me, we do a lot of this through our MTSS meetings at school. We meet once a month. We talk about students of concern through that MTSS process, the multi-tiered systems of support. And we talk about a student's attendance as one of those puzzle pieces when we look at the whole child. So looking at some of those tiered supports, tier 1 would be a universal support for all students, school-wide messaging about attendance, maybe posters, announcements, campaigns to reinforce expectations for everyone, for why it's important to be at school every single day. Tier 2, targeted support for students showing moderate absenteeism. This may include things like family meetings, maybe counseling sessions, academic supports, and of course, ultimately goal setting. Let's set some goals to get you here to school as much as we can. Tier 3 would be more intensive support for students with chronic absenteeism identified. Schools may develop individual attendance plans, connect with families and community resources, or possibly even involve legal authorities if necessary. Some schools also implement attendance contracts, and I've seen this before as well. These agreements are signed by students, families, and the school, outlining those expectations, the supports, and how we're going to monitor schedules. The goal through that is to create accountability without punishing unnecessarily, and in the end, to celebrate progress that's made along the way. Proactive approaches are key. Waiting until a student becomes habitually absent often makes intervention so much more difficult. Proactive strategies may include, personalized support, peer mentoring, academic catch-up programs, and family engagement strategies. Again, working together, not against one another. Attendance interventions also take a whole child approach. Chronic absenteeism is rarely about motivation alone. It often stems from barriers like health issues, those family responsibilities, or even transportation needs. Schools that address these root causes at the beginning see the greatest success. For example, a school might coordinate with a local nonprofit to provide rides or adjust bus schedules to accommodate families. They might partner with health providers to schedule appointments outside of school hours so the student who needs those medical appointments doesn't have to miss school to get to them. They might connect students with tutoring or academic supports for days that they do miss. The impact of these strategies is going to be measurable. Schools that implement tiered attendance interventions often see reductions in absenteeism of 10 to 30% over the course of a year, along with improvements in student engagement, academic performance, and overall school climate. Now let's shift focus to incentives and recognition. While tracking and interventions are important, positive reinforcement is often the most powerful and sometimes the only motivator that we have for students and getting better attendance out of them. Recognizing students who show up consistently sends the message, we see you, we value your effort, and your presence matters. Schools in Indiana use a variety of strategies. The old certificates and awards, recognition assemblies. There might be things like extra recess, homework passes, the ever-loving pizza parties, one of my favorites. Goal-oriented programs where classrooms or grades earn points for collective attendance is another strategy that can be used. And research shows that students are more likely to attend when they feel connected to their school community, building those relationships. Positive reinforcement strengthens those relationships with teachers and peers and at the school at large, which ultimately increases student engagement. Some schools highlight personal improvement, not just perfect attendance. A student who significantly reduces absences from one semester to the next can be recognized for that progress. This encourages growth and builds confidence within the student. Involving families amplifies the effect. Sending letters home, posting accomplishments on school websites, or even inviting families to recognition events. Those kind of things strengthen the message that attendance matters both at school and at home. Finally, building a culture of attendance is crucial. When students see peers being celebrated for showing up, just being there, it reinforces the behavior. Peer influence combined with structured recognition creates a school environment where attendance becomes a shared value rather than just a rule. Well, let's take a closer look at what the research tells us. Nationally, about 14% of students are chronically absent. Early absenteeism is especially concerning in those elementary grades, as missing school sets students behind in reading and math, plain and simple. Research shows that students with high absenteeism in kindergarten and first grade are much more likely to struggle in middle school and beyond. Attendance affects social and emotional development too. Students who miss school frequently are less likely to participate in peer interactions, those collaborative projects, and extracurricular activities. These experiences help develop the social skills, resilience, and confidence that students need to learn at those early elementary grades. Data from Indiana reinforces these findings. Schools with higher chronic absenteeism often face challenges with academic performance, student engagement, and overall classroom management. Attendance is not just, again, an individual metric. It impacts the entire school community and environment. And we talked a little bit before about equity, and it plays a major role here. Students from low-income families or those facing those transportation, health, and family challenges, or they are disproportionately affected. Schools that provide support like transportation assistance, health services, or flexible schedules see the greatest improvements in overall attendance and achievement. That early intervention is key again. Monitoring attendance weekly and reaching out after a few missed days reduces chronic absenteeism. Programs combining data tracking, personalized interventions, and positive reinforcement are the most effective. The stakes are high, okay? Chronic absenteeism predicts long-term academic and life outcomes. Students who are absent frequently are less likely to graduate high school, period, which affects future employment and income, like we said. Attendance is a predictor of opportunity, not just success. Attendance in Indiana is now a key factor in school accountability, which I alluded to at the beginning of this episode. The state just come out recently with new accountability guidelines for schools K through 12. They break them down by grade bands. I think it's K through 3, 4 through 8, and then 9 through 12. And it obviously has things like your test scores. When you get into the junior, senior high, you're talking credits and pathways. But the one common theme across them all was attendance. We just updated accountability model, and it includes attendance alongside test scores, graduation rates, forgot about that one, and all those other performance indicators that I listed. This new accountability reflects an understanding that learning isn't just about test scores anymore. It's about being present to learn. Including attendance and accountability encourages schools to track attendance more carefully and analyze those patterns, implement those interventions for students showing the early signs of absenteeism, and celebrating positive attendance to create a school-wide culture. I can remember at one of my elementary schools where I kind of got criticized for celebrating and focusing on attendance so much, even more so than like honor roll. We kind of got away from celebrating honor roll and really focused on attendance. And I had a parent complaining about, well, my kid's not getting anything for all the hard work that they're putting in and the grades they're earning because you're so focused on attendance. But I would almost argue with them, if your kid's here every day, that means they're going to do better in school. So let's celebrate the base foundation of what is giving them the support and success that they're earning. Being there, attendance, let's focus on that. Accountability isn't just about punishment in the long run. It's about support and improvement. When we support them through incentives, they improve their attendance. Schools with high absenteeism rates receive guidance and resources to address barriers, not just criticize them. Attendance data is used at many levels, the classroom, the grade level, and school-wide ultimately. This informs decision-making for the administrators by allocating support staff like counselors and social workers, planning interventions for at-risk students, adjusting programming, schedules, or transportation to reduce absences for students. Community engagement is also important and critical. Schools are encouraged to partner with families, local organizations, healthcare providers to address systematic attendance barriers. Why are kids not getting to school? Attendance becomes a shared responsibility between the school and the greater community. And ultimately, Indiana's inclusion of attendance in their new accountability reflects a broader understanding. Consistent attendance is a prerequisite for learning, equity, and success. So let's put a human face to all this for just a moment. Student A struggled with frequent absences due to transportation challenges and their parents' work schedule. Without early intervention, this student fell behind academically, they lost confidence, and they just disengaged both academically and socially. By the end of the year, gaps were significant with this student, and the student faced a challenging transition to the next grade level. Makes sense. Student B had consistent attendance, even when challenges arose. Illnesses or family responsibilities, there were supports in place, like rides to school, flexible assignments, encouragement from teachers and administration. This student stayed connected academically and socially, built confidence, and formed strong relationships. And by the end of the year, grades improved, and the student felt fully integrated into the school community. They felt supported. These examples illustrate that attendance is not just a number. It directly impacts learning, relationships, and long-term opportunity for the student. Schools that intervene early and reinforce that positive attendance create lifelong advantages for students. Here's what I want you listeners to take away today from this episode. Simply, attendance matters. Every day counts. Each day a student misses is a lost opportunity for learning, growth, and connection. The Indiana law is clear. Students must attend school, and parents have a legal responsibility to support their students' attendance. Schools can intervene early and should intervene early. Tiered supports, attendance teams, individualized plans, all of those can prevent chronic absenteeism from occurring. Positive reinforcement does work. Recognizing and celebrating attendance builds engagement and strengthens school culture. Attendance now affects our accountability as a school. Schools are evaluated and will be evaluated on whether students are showing up, making attendance now a top priority for all Indiana schools. For educators, use attendance as an early warning system. Look for patterns, intervene early, and celebrate those successes. For parents, please prioritize your child's attendance. Communicate with your school if barriers exist. Reach out to them and help your child develop habits around consistent attendance. Attendance isn't just a rule, folks. It's about equity, opportunity, and long-term success. By focusing on attendance, we create better outcomes for students, stronger school communities, and a more equitable education system in the long run. Whew. Julie, I hope this is kind of what you were looking for when you said, Brad, talk about attendance. Julie, if it's not, hit me up and we'll take it another direction. But this was a lot of information in a 30-minute episode of Interventions and Detentions. But I hope it was informative. I hope educators, parents, community members get something out of it other than attendance matters. Because at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. Attendance does matter. I thank you for joining me again this week on Interventions and Detentions. Let's keep working together to make every day count for our kids. Tune in each week. New episodes come out on Friday mornings, 8 a.m., maybe a few minutes before. You can find us on every possible platform, I think. There's probably some podcast episode or platforms that we're not on yet, but hey, we're on the major ones. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, iHeart, YouTube. Pretty much wherever you can find a podcast, you can find Interventions and Detentions. So look us up, check us out on social media. We're on Insta, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, X. We try to post everywhere. I try to keep it out in front of you as much as we can. Keep sharing, keep coming up with ideas for me. I say us, it's just me. It's just me on the mic anymore. Haven't had a guest in a while. If you want to be a guest, hit me up. I've got some waiting in the wings that I need to start reaching out to. But it's just been easier lately to drop an episode topic and run with it. So, all right, I'm going to quit rambling now. It's time to call it a night. Interventions and Detentions, folks. You know what it is. It's where the real learning begins. Tune in again next week. This is your host, Brad, saying thanks for hanging out today. We'll see you next week.